Hey guys, welcome back to another video, another week, another opposition preview, and this wonderful gentleman alongside me is joining me for yet another video on the channel. Of course, he was here a couple of days ago for the rivals, but now we're looking a little bit closer to Jack's home, looking at Fulham, because City play Fulham at 3 PM on a Saturday actually, which is a nice rarity, not an 8 PM kickoff for once for us. I'm looking forward to it. Jack, hello again, good to have you back, mate.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the channel, mate.
It's been 2 days. It's been a long time. A lot has changed in those 2 minutes. 2 days, sorry, not 2 minutes. But of course, looking forward to the Fulham game because it'd be a good chance to get to know from our perspective as City fans what's been going on in the world of Fulham, what we can expect. Because it's been an interesting summer for Fulham. Of course, a bit of a blow, a massive blow at one point. You lost Mitrovic, a huge blow. But then. We
there's no beating around it. It's fair enough.
This is a massive blow. One of those things where, but you couldn't have really seen it coming. It's just one of those things where it sort of feels like an act of God to an extent. Like the Saudi money coming out of nowhere. We lost Riyad Mahrez as well. There's talks right now of Liverpool could even lose Salah. Like no one is immune to the potential losses of the power of the Saudi league. So it's been a weird one. Of course, there was a lot of talk about losing Marco Silva as well. I think wasn't there? I think he stayed in the end, is right. And what was the summer like as a Fulham fan? I think you've sort of signed Timothy Castagne as well, actually, haven't you, in the last few days? Raul Jimenez has come in, Calvin Bassey. So what's the summer been like for Fulham?
Stressful is probably the term I would use more than any other. It's been hard, and I think that the Mitrovic cloud has sat over the entire summer, right? And this is not one that. Okay, it came from nowhere, he went. And look, yes, obviously Mahrez went. And I think that that's obviously a blow for City. But equally, it felt like that happened early doors and there's been enough time to bring in a replacement. I'm really excited about seeing Jeremy Doku in the Premier League. I'm really excited about seeing Jeremy Doku under Pep.
I can't wait, mate.
When these things happen and they happen early on and you get the money through the door and it's kind of fine, you're like, yes, we've lost a big player, but there is time to kind of scope it out. The whole thing about the Mitrovic saga was that it was like he was going, then he was staying, then he was reintegrated into the group, and then suddenly he comes on in the Everton game. He basically creates Fulham's goal, and then 2 days later, he's off on a plane to Saudi Arabia. And it's like, and it all happened in this one weekend where Fulham got battered 3-0 by Brentford, our local rivals, at home. And then after the game, Marco Silva comes out and goes, yeah, Mitrovic is gone. You're like, do weekends get any worse than that? I don't think I've ever had a worse footballing weekend than that in itself. So stressful, it would be definitely the term. But there is scope, there is time. Raul Jimenez came in. He's growing into it, I think, a little bit. I was relatively skeptical. I think at £5 million.
Yeah, it's worth it, isn't it? With the point.
It's a gamble I'd take, but equally it did feel like Fulham needed another through the door. Now, as we record this, that hasn't happened. By the time it's out, it might have done. So there is definitely Fulham in the market for another striker.
I wasn't sure it was you who tweeted it or someone, but someone mentioned Nesri from he would be perfect. Was it you maybe?
It was.
Imagine him at Fulham. Like I remember that tweet because when you read a tweet, you just think, oh, that's right. I remember thinking, he'd be perfect. So obviously, I watched him up close against City recently as well, and he'd be I wouldn't say not great as such, but even like you'd be like, oh wow, we've got a young 26-year-old striker who would come in, who would just bang in goals for you, who would suit your style of play. It's not going to happen though, is it really? Unfortunately,
I don't think so. No. I think Sevilla are going to have to sell in the series, but I don't think he's going to come to Fulham, sadly. There was a couple that I really liked. I really liked Vangelis Pavlidis from RZ Alkmaar, but he seems to have gone to Sevilla, which is interesting because it does suggest that En-Nesyri is off somewhere, but I'm not sure where that somewhere is going to be yet. So, there's a lot of kind of moving parts. I do think Fulham can take a little bit of a punt here. I think Raul Jimenez is good enough to probably bring another striker in who might have a little bit of a, more of a gamble kind of phrase. Because if they then work, then brilliant. And if they don't, then you're going, okay, fine. Well, at least we can fall back on Raul. Marco Silva, I think, has this week been interesting in his substitutions, in his selections for the Carabao Cup, suggesting that there isn't enough depth. Rodrigo Muniz played pretty much the entire 90 minutes against Spurs. He was out on loan at Middlesbrough last season and was dropped after Christmas and didn't really feature again for the rest of the season. So you're talking about a player who Michael Carrick decided wasn't good enough for a promotion chasing Middlesbrough, suddenly starting game games for Fulham, coming off the bench for Fulham, I think that Marcus Silva was probably making a point more than anything else. He actually did okay, but it was one of those where I think he's going.
It would be great if he did brilliant, wouldn't it? Making a point.
It would have been great.
Damn it, yeah. But yeah, I mean that's fair enough. I mean, is who you linked to anyone at the moment? Sorry, is there anyone like you think that is likely to happen?
Well, we've had a couple of things about Lucas Campos. I don't know why Fulham seem to be intrinsically linked with Sevilla through this window, but Lucas Campos is the one. Now, apparently that Fulham and Sevilla have agreed terms, and it's on Campos to decide whether he wants to move to Fulham or not. So that's going to be an interesting one. It's never nice when that kind of thing's out in the press, is it? Because then if it doesn't happen, you're like, that's because he just decided he fully didn't want to come. Cool. So, look, yeah, I think that Fulham often work in deadline day week. This is when Fulham tend to bring in like a random cascade of names that everyone's like, oh, where did that come from? So there is kind of hope that there will be names through the door. I think 3 or 4 more will come in, but the problem is that at this point it feels very scattergun in terms of who those might be, and it feels a lot like Tony Khan, our director of football, who has had real success towards the end of the window, especially last year, I think. It does still feel a little bit like it's like, okay, we get to the end of the window and we look for value. And I can understand that from a financial standpoint. But from Marco Silva's standpoint, he keeps coming out and being like, it'd be great to have players in May. And Fulham were secure in their Premier League survival in March. We're on the verge of September. And we're no really further along than we were at that point. And that's a worry. We are coming from a better standpoint, though. So that's probably positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you go into the season, you don't mean to patronise, but obviously you're looking usually towards the bottom of the table. Not always, but do you feel relatively confident this season? Because last year was good. You had a good season, and are you not really fearing the big R word this season in particular? Do you feel like what's the aim for Fulham? Obviously, it can change.
Survival. 100%. It's still survival. It's still survival and consolidation, I think.
Yeah.
And look, obviously, you can have. I think last year was a good season. It was also helped by the fact that there were a couple of random sides who tumbled, the likes of Chelsea finishing in the bottom half.
Finished above them, by the way. Was that nice?
It was just glorious. It was 19 years since Fulham beat Chelsea, and obviously got that win at the Cottage. All my best friends are Chelsea fans. It is really nice to get one over. I always say for Fulham, the game I want to win the most in any given season is Chelsea. The game I least want to lose is Brentford. That's the way the rivalries work, I think.
The London scene confused as just a random northern bloke like me. It's like usually I don't even know where you all are, but there's just so many of you just playing each other. And I don't know who the rivals are for everyone. I know the obvious main ones, like I know like the North London derby and all that kind of stuff. But then I know Chelsea hates Spurs. It feels like everyone hates Spurs for what it's worth. Is that pretty much accepted?
I'm not sure what's going on there. Yeah, I think West Ham hates Spurs as well. Don't they? I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but it seems to be the way of it. Fulham and Brentford are very close. Obviously, Chelsea and Fulham are around the corner from each other, but Chelsea just don't care about Fulham. Like we're like a pesky annoyance on their shoulder. It's very little. It's little brother, big brother syndrome, I think. Yeah. Like the little brother always wants to beat the big brother at stuff, and when the big brother wins, he's like, "Yeah, shut up." Like, it's not. It's like you're not my level. Go away. And that very much feels like the relationship between Chelsea and Fulham. Whereas Brentford were like that to Fulham, and now are a settled Premier League side who have done really well, and who sadly are now just in that kind of conversation. And so Fulham have gone from kind of ignoring Brentford in the way that Chelsea ignore Fulham to having to deal with the fact that they are there and at the level and on a par at this point. And so that's a difficult thing to come to terms with for Fulham fans, but it does feel like they're the ones that now it's like, okay, these are relatively level clubs, and we've been scrapping each other, whether that's sort of promotion from the Championship or in the Premier League. That feels like a thing that's been going for a while now, and the rivalry has really developed its own kind of sense of identity, I think.
Adama Traore, are you a fan? Because I know he's very divisive as a footballer. Like he really is. Traore, I feel like he's the kind of guy I should love, but he's driving me mad. I am a City fan. There's probably a lot of that comes from that because he only turned up against bloody us for Wolves. But you signed a sort of cheat code there. I don't know if. What do you think about Adama Traore? Because I think he is divisive. I think he is. You either love him or you hate him.
He's fun. Adama Traore. So I watched Fulham play Spurs at the Cottage this week, and he started for the first time in a Fulham shirt, and it was an interesting performance. There are so many moments where he will let the ball just like roll under his foot and go out of play, and you're like, he is an incredibly frustrating player, but equally I don't think it's hard to deny his effectiveness in certain situations. And I think that, look, on a free transfer, gamble, why not? Yeah. Someone that's going to come in who's going to cause defenders nightmares, whether that's, for rightly or wrongly, who's going to come in and defenders like, oh, for God's sake, 𝙏𝙬𝙨𝙩𝙖𝙬 has just come off the bench. That's just what I could do without with 20 minutes left of this game. Exactly. So I think it's fun. It's fun, and he's going to frustrate and delight in equal measure, and that's something you just have to deal with Traoré. But equally, you know what? I'm pretty glad to have him at the club. I think he'll be a good presence around, and it's one that I think will vaguely have good. I did say when we signed him, I was hoping for a Dan James replacement that had more end product than Dan James, but alas,
you got a bulked up Dan James basically.
Exactly. So here we are.
Well, this is fun. I didn't see a report, by the way, and I hate to terrify you, and you're probably already very aware of this. I saw something earlier on Twitter when we were between recording episodes. A Bayern linked to Paulino. Is that actually news that you're aware of?
No, Bayern have been linked to Kenny Tete. I just don't think the Bayern have the money to buy João Palhinha.
Yeah, probably true.
Obviously, they've spent 100 million on Harry Kane this summer. Fulham have kind of set the initial bar on Palhinha's price tag at around 70 to 80 million pounds because that's what he's worth to Fulham.
Yeah.
Now, I think that you can look at the Declan Rice deal and Fulham could go, well, if that's what they're paying for Rice, then this is what you can pay for Palhinha. And so unless anyone has that kind of money knocking around, I don't think he's going to go in this window. I mean, look, someone could conjure that out of there and Liverpool could drop 80 million out of nowhere and we'd go, okay, well, we're going to have to deal with the consequences of this.
Yeah.
If Palhinha goes, Fulham are in right trouble. Let's be flat. Yeah. He's so important to the way that Fulham operate. His presence alone is massive. So if he was to go, I think it would completely change the dimensions of Fulham's season. I also think if he went, Marco Silva might walk.
Really?
So, I think he was pretty unhappy about Mitrovic going. But if Palhinha was to go as well, that would be a pretty big blow to I think, any ambitions of being outside of a relegation scrap.
He's phenomenal. Let's talk about your start of the season, though. Let's talk about your start of the season away from the squad. Of course, the 2-2 draw the other day. We chatted the other day on the episode of The Rivals about it. A big upset there for Arsenal. Spirited, with 10 men as well. Really impressive. Of course, that man Paulino with a late goal as well there. You didn't have the, as you said, it wasn't the best start. You did beat Fulham. You did beat Everton, actually. But then, of course, the Brentford game, at home at the Cottage. Another red card as well, losing 3-0. But that point in the game, I feel like... I didn't actually see the game. But was it... I know Brentford
the red card was for the penalty, which made it 2-0.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, this is all a bit uncomfortable. I don't think it's a foul. I don't think it's a penalty, and I don't think it's a red card. But it is one of those, that happens, and you have to kind of... accept that those decisions are going to sometimes go for you and sometimes go against you. It's just a shame that it went against us in a game like that. Look, I was really worried after the first 2 games of the season because, yes, we beat Everton, but we should have lost that game. If Everton had anybody who could finish anything, then Fulham would have lost that game. Bernd Leno kept us in it. And then, obviously, to get battered at home by Brentford is never nice. So there was a point that it looked like, and obviously you have to kind of deal with the realities and what could have happened. They're different things. But after the 2 games, I think a fair result would have been Fulham would have been on 0 points and our goal difference would have been -6. And if you'd been having this conversation with me last week about how I feel going into this City game, I was pretty down in the dumps when I was recording Fulhamish, a week ago today, pretty much. I was pretty stressed about everything that was going on. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Mitrovic had just walked. It was like, okay, well, where are Fulham going? But actually, this week has been a real uplift. And I think it's a real squad getting together and being like, hang on, we are not one player. We are able to see out this storm. We are a collective unit. And the performance against Arsenal, I was really impressed with. The performance against Spurs on Tuesday night, the first half was brilliant from Fulham. The intensity, the ability to disrupt that Spurs press, to be able to disrupt Spurs on the board as well. Now, obviously, they made changes, fine, but I just thought that Fulham were brilliant. And then so now we're going into this game, and I assumed we would be going into this week going, we'll lose to Arsenal, we'll probably lose to Spurs and be out of the cup, and then we'll lose to City. And suddenly it's like, hang on, we've got a point at Arsenal, knock Spurs out of the cup, and we go to City and, in a kind of vein of, okay, Well, let's have a go then. And that's actually a really nice place to be. And it's a much more positive feeling, I think, than where Fulham were last week.
I remember it last year, Fulham at home, we beat you last minute with a penalty. It was 10 men City, and we were really impressive that game. But that was a battle, you know. Obviously, it was 10 men, but it was a real battle that game. And it was Cancelo actually got sent off, I think. It was a tough game. And are you I always try to do the whole like head and heart thing. Like what are you expecting from this? You know, from your head. What are you expecting from your heart? Like, what's your expectations from this game?
I think to go to the Etihad and expect to win anything as a Fulham fan, a mid-table team, to be honest, as any team really, but especially as a mid-table Premier League team, I think is optimistic at maybe best. It's one of those where I think Fulham will always give you a fight. I don't think Fulham are going to roll over. And that's, I think, something that we've become accustomed to over the last year. And as you say, last year was a battle, and obviously it was a tough loss considering the way that Fulham had played, I think, in across the course of that game.
Yeah.
But City were brilliant with 10 men, as you say. But equally, you know, you go in and now I expect Fulham to give every team a game. And that's something that we didn't see for the first couple of years when Fulham were bouncing between the Premier League and the Championship. It was like, okay, as soon as something went against us, the team would fold. And this side just knows how to work for itself. And I think that what we're seeing with it is a team learning to gel together again, who've been maybe released from the cloud that the Mitrovic kind of cast over the place. And that's not a dispersion on Mitrovic. I'm not suggesting that he wasn't anything but absolutely brilliant for Fulham. But I think this summer, his presence, the fact that he trained alone, he went to America but didn't actually play on pre-season, it was all very uncomfortable, and it was all a lot of question marks. You know, Fulham have been built around Alexander Mitrovic for the past 2 years. And suddenly it was like, well, do we go ahead with that same system? Do we have to change? I think the players might feel a little bit unshackled by the fact that obviously it's incredibly sad that he's gone, but at least we know where we stand. And that's actually maybe been represented in the performances this week. So I expect Fulham to go and be a tough side nut to crack, to be a team that will give City a battle. But I think to expect anything out of it would be madness. You can hope, and I didn't expect much out of Arsenal, but you could nick a point. You know, occasionally we've seen Brentford come to the Etihad and just happen to roll you over by sort of accident as you were pushing for a winner. Those things can happen. And so, I mean, I think it would be unwise to rule anything out, but equally, I think it would be mad to go in and be like, I'm expecting 3 points.
Yeah, have you changed? So you talked about the Mitrovic thing, and then do we change after? Has there been any system changes? Like what is the current like Fulham setup? You know, what are you expecting? How are you expecting Fulham to set up against City?
Well, we've stuck with the 4-2-3-1, which served us so well last year and served us very well in the Championship before it. Raul is a slightly different player to Mitrovic. He's starting to grow, I think, into this. When he came, he felt quite timid, and completely fairly enough. I'm not criticising that, because obviously what happened to him and his injury getting back to full fitness was an incredibly difficult time for him. But I think we've seen in the last 2 games that he's willing a little bit more to throw himself about, to try new things. He tried a couple of bicycle kicks against Arsenal. He very nearly scored an outrageous bicycle kick at one point. But he just feels more, it's like he's getting to grips with things again. Just a bit more comfortable on the ball, a bit more comfortable challenging defenders, a little bit less timid around things. And I think that that's important, so especially if you're going to step into Mitrovic's shoes. But also he's a little bit quicker than Alexander was, in that he can lead the press a little bit better. Last year, what happened was �荷Pereira would lead the press from the 10, and he'd get in front of Mitrovic, and he'd be the guy who would chase down defenders. But actually, I think with Raul there, they're able to split duties a little bit more, and I think it's freeing up Andreas just to have a little bit more creativity. I also think that he's going to be the penalty taker. So if we've got any FPL heads in here, I think �荷Pereira might be an interesting one to just have an eye on in FPL terms.
Shocker,
but
mate. It's shocker so far this season.
No, don't worry. I don't even want to talk about it. It's
honestly,
been that bad
I've
for
had
me.
an awful one. De Bruyne and Stones out, and like 𝙤𝙬𝙞𝙩𝙬 was my little bench guy. Then he scored, then got injured and went out. And I had Luke Shaw. No, I had Esteemed in my first draft, took him out and put Shaw in. And it's just been mess after mess. You know, like I look at my first draft, I was like, why don't I have to stick with that? But that's a story for another day.
Makes you feel better, mate. I captained 𝙤𝙬𝙞𝙀 Núñez, not last week where he scored twice, the week before, and he got 1 minute, so I took him out of the side completely.
Nah, that's life. It's been it's been difficult in the FPL trenches this season. It really has.
Oh,
And
yeah,
someone
mate.
in the trenches is going to in the comments going to go, I've got 95 points last week. Well done you. Don't care. Congratulations to you. It's a stupid game for stupid people. Sticks to real football. Anyway, Jack, thank you so much for joining me, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. As always, guys, you can go and check out Jack's content over on Ranks FC. Of course, for the more Fulham twist, Fulhamish pod. The link will be in the description. As always, Jack, you're a superstar. Thank you very much, mate.
No, thanks for having me, mate. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you very much to Jack. Thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Check out the episode of The Rivals a couple of days ago when Jack was chatting to me about Game Week 3 over in the Premier League. And of course, any other videos on the channel right now, give them a watch, give them a like, support the channel in a bit. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.